everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some books that I read in February, March, and the first half of April that I really enjoyed, and I highly recommend all of these books. I would also love to hear what you're reading, so make sure to comment some of your favorite reads down in the comments below. I'm starting off with two books that are a duology. The first book is Her Mother's Hope by Francine Rivers. Marta is 12, lives in Switzerland, and loves school. She desperately wants an education, but there is only one problem. It's 1901, and her father doesn't think that Marta belongs in school. So, Marta's father pulls her out of school and has her start working for 4 people in the community. After she does that for a while, Marta's father sends her back to school, but it's not the type of school that Marta wants to go to. This is a school that teaches you how to be a maid. So basically, Marta's father has set her up to be a maid for the rest of her life. Ultimately, Martha thrives in this education as she makes a life for her own and as she travels Europe. But pursuing a life of her own comes with many hardships. Eventually, Marta marries and has children, and her husband and family move to California, and that is a dream that her husband Nicholas had. Life was hard for them as a family. When they first got to California, they were living in a tent, and then after a while of living in a tent, Marta bought a house with the money that she had saved up to raise her children. The story then shifts to Marta's oldest child, Hildemara. Hildemara really struggles to have the courage to speak up in life. This really troubles Marta because Marta does not want Hildemara to be like her sister Elise, who was never comfortable out of the sight of her mother. Hildemara wants to become a nurse, and this does not make Marta happy. Marta believes this is one of the lowest jobs you can have, and Marta also thinks that you should not spend your life serving others. Throughout Hildemara's life, Marta was very hard on Hildemara, which made her feel very unloved at times, especially when Hildemara saw her mom treat everyone else around her with kindness. This really put a strain on their relationship. And in the second book, Her Daughter's Dream, you follow Hildemara and her daughter Carolyn and their struggling relationship. You also see Carolyn form a better relationship with her grandmother Marta. You also follow Carolyn into adulthood, and you follow her daughter Mayflower Rose, and you also see their struggling relationship, and then you see Mayflower Rose and the relationship she has with her grandmother Hildemara and how it's better than the relationship that she has with her mother. Only time will tell if these 3 mother-daughter relationships can be healed. Beartown by Fredrik Backman. Beartown is a little community that's basically dwindling away, but the only thing that's holding this little town together is hockey, and hockey is what they use to hope for a better tomorrow. The junior hockey team has a spot in the national semi-finals, and everyone thinks they have a shot at winning. The hopes for this small town rest in the hands of these hockey players. After the semi-final game, there is a violent attack that leaves one girl traumatized, but the entire town is affected by everything that happens. And please know that there is a trigger warning for sexual violence, and it is a major part of the whole book. Make Your Bed by William H. McRaven. William H. McRaven shares 10 principles that he learned during his Navy SEAL training. These 10 tips not only helped him overcome challenges in his Navy SEAL training, but they also helped him overcome challenges throughout his life. He explains that anyone can use these 10 tips to challenge themselves for the better. This book originated off of a speech that he gave in 2014 at the University of Texas in Austin at their commencement. In the speech, he shared the 10 tips, and in the book, he goes into greater detail about the 10 tips. The speech that he shared at the commencement is at the end of the book. This book was written in a very simple way, but it was one that I greatly enjoyed. Book Girl by Sarah Clarkson. In this book, Sarah Clarkson talks about all the books that have made an impact on her life. I found many books to add to my reading list, and I really enjoyed how she put each of the books into a specific category, but also included why she added each book into this book. She also talks about when she was growing up, as well as how her family shaped her love of reading. After I finished reading this book, I went back and made a list of all the books she talks about in here, and there are over 350 books that she mentions, and I think this is a really great resource, and I highly recommend picking it up and giving it a read. Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor and theologian, and he was known for his opposition to the Nazis, which led to his execution in 1945. This book is about living the Christian life with a Christian community. The topics that are focused on are community, spending time with others, spending time by yourself, ministry, confession, and communion. I read this book in a very short amount of time, and I would not recommend doing that. To get the most out of this book, I would recommend reading it in no less than a week, and maybe ideally even taking up to a few months to read it. I know that's a really long time to read a book, but that's one of the ways you could get the most out of this book. This book was very powerful and encouraging, but it was convicting, practical, and easy to implement into my daily life. I just want to share 2 quotes that stuck out to me. I'm just going to share the quotes and not my thoughts, just so that you can absorb these quotes. These are not the only 2 quotes that stuck out to me, but they are the 2 quotes that I want to share. The first quote is, "God is not a God of emotionalism, but the God of truth." And the second one is, "How can God entrust great things to those who will not gratefully receive the little things from God's hand? If we do not give thanks daily for the Christian community in which we have been placed, even when there are no great experiences, no noticeable riches, but much weakness, difficulty, and little faith, and if, on the contrary, we only keep complaining to God that everything is so miserable and so insignificant and does not at all live up to our expectations, then we hinder God from letting our community grow according to the measure and riches that are there for us all in Jesus Christ." Stepping Heavenward by Elizabeth Prentiss. Stepping Heavenward is in the format of a journal. This is a fictional journal. When I was reading this, I thought this was a non-fictional journal for about a third of the book, but then I realized that it was a fictional journal. The writer of this journal is 16 years old, and her name is Catherine. We follow Catherine's life as she talks about faith, courtship, marriage, having children, struggles, and everything in between. Catherine writes many pieces of advice that she was given in this journal, and these pieces of advice are also ones that we can apply to our own lives. One quote is, "You cannot prove to yourself that you love God by examining your feelings towards Him. They are indefinite and they fluctuate, but just as far as you obey Him, just so far depend on it. You love Him. It is not natural to us sinful, ungrateful human beings to prefer His pleasure to our own, or to follow His way instead of our own way, and nothing but love to Him can or does make us obedient to Him." Catherine also shares her thoughts of struggling in the Christian faith, and one of these quotes are, "I want Him," and she's referring to God, "but I want to have my own way too. I want to walk humbly and softly before Him, and I want to go where I shall be admired and applauded. To whom shall I yield? To God or to myself?" And then we follow Catherine try to answer this question as we continue reading her journal. There was so much detail in this book, which has made this so powerful and relatable. I highly recommend this book. If you've ever talked to me in person about why I read so much, then I've probably told you that one of the reasons is because I'm trying to spend less time on my phone. And one of the reasons I'm telling you this is because the final book I want to talk about is 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Reinke. And the best way to talk about this book is to read what he wrote in the conclusion. In the last 12 chapters, I have warned against 12 corresponding ways in which smartphones are changing us and undermining our spiritual health. Our phones amplify our addiction to distractions and thereby splinter our perception of our place in time. Our phones push us to evade the limits of embodiment and thereby cause us to treat one another harshly. Our phones feed our cravings for immediate approval and promise to hedge against our fears of missing out. Our phones undermine key literacy skills and, because of our lack of discipline, make it increasingly difficult for us to identify ultimate meaning. Our phones offer us a buffet of produced media and tempt us to indulge in visual vices. Our phones overtake and distort our identity and tempt us towards unhealthy isolation and loneliness. However, recognizing that phones are here to stay, he offers positive practices in place of the negative. Along the way, I have also attempted to commend 12 life disciplines we need to preserve our spiritual health in this smartphone age. We minimize unnecessary distractions in life to hear from God and to find our place in God's unfolding history. We embrace our flesh and blood embodiment and handle one another with grace and gentleness. We aim at God's ultimate approval and find that in Christ we have no ultimate regrets to fear. We treasure the gift of literacy and prioritize God's word. We listen to God's voice in creation and find a fountain of delight in the unseen Christ. We treasure Christ to be molded into his image and seek to serve the legitimate needs of our neighbors. This book doesn't just provide a checklist of behaviors to change, but an entire approach to reestablish. He calls us to be deliberate, others-minded, and God-honoring in the use of our smartphones in our daily lives, rather than being used by them, and offers many practical tips to wisely use the most powerful tool we have. Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure to comment some of your recent reads down below. Remember to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any future videos I post. Also, feel free to like and share this with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks for watching!